So let's do a quick recap of my performance in 2019. As the year has come to a conclusion, we are about to embark on a new year. Now, I did break the 300 victory plateau for the first time ever at 301 wins, the most wins I've ever accrued in a single calendar year, but at the same time, I also had the most losses at 196. I finished with a 61% accuracy rate, which isn't bad. Now, I exclude draws. I don't include draws on either side of things because I don't pick draws. It'd be crazy if I did and actually hit. But now, as far as how the year ended, I think I want to say I ended fairly successfully. You look at my last show, I went 10-3. I had a 10-0 on the third last show of the year. I won 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of the last 10 main events I got correct. I was above 500 in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of the last 10 shows, including 11-3 at UFC 161, 10-0 at ESPN on 7, and 10-3 at UFC Fight Night 165. The cash was solid. Certainly returned some good returns, including the ESPN on 7, where I had 158 units won with the CBC, 75-plus units on the HBC betting package, the best one in the last little while, so we'll see if we can continue that. Overall, it was a good year. It was a tough start. We kind of rallied about, and we'll see how things keep rolling. Very much looking forward to the new calendar year. The layoff kind of magnifies the significance getting back into the swing of things. And on that note, welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive. Welcome to 2020. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson. And on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC 246 pay-per-view, which will go down on January 18th, 2020 from the T-Mobile Arena in Paradise, Nevada, featuring the return of Conor McGregor taking on Cowboy Donald Cerrone. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. The bet packs will also be for sale, a brand new subscription package, $15 for one night of betting up and down. I've updated them a little bit to make the bet packs a little bit more accessible. Or you can subscribe and save yourself some cash. If you subscribe early in the rotation, for the next 2 months, you will be able to save $30. And it's not a renewing subscription. It's 2 months, and then you decide to renew at the end of those 2 months or not. If you don't renew, obviously, it doesn't cost you anything. If you don't do anything, it doesn't cost anything. If you come back and renew, you're back into the swing of things. You can follow me. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Please like the video. Throw me a comment. I try and respond as much as I possibly can. You can follow us on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. I do as much as I possibly can to reply and be upfront. A lot of people email me with their picks and opinions or looking for advice. I do what I can. What I'm going to tell you this, especially if you're new to the channel, I am not perfect. And I will go through slumps just like anybody else. Anybody who tells you they are a crackerjack shot at doing this is full of shit and they're selling snake oil. This is a tough business to predict fights, and I've been doing it since 2010, I believe, now at this point in time. So it's not an easy business to predict fights, to predict outcomes of these contests because there's so many variables involved. So again, be patient. We'll be here for the highs, you'll be here for the lows, and hopefully we'll have a good time in between, make some cash along the way. I've been rambling for a little bit, so on that note, let's get to our first main card prediction. The opening fight of the night goes down in the UFC's lightweight division as the former lightweight champion both in the UFC and WEC, Showtime Anthony Pettis, currently ranked 11th, 22-9-0, takes on the surging 16-2 Diego Ferreira. Ferreira is rolling after a trio of strong, lower-level victories. Guys that are good, solid fighters, but don't carry that, quite that big, significant win with them. He took out a pair of very talented, very difficult opponents in Rustam Khabilov and Merbek Taisimov. Back-to-back victories, very impressive. I got the Khabilov one right. I got the Taisimov one wrong. Now, for Pettis, he's coming off a difficult defeat at 170 pounds to Nate Diaz. Prior to that, he stopped Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. He was TKO'd by Tony Ferguson, beat Michael Chiesa, stopped by Dustin Poirier. He's been going through a lot of ups and downs since his title run. Now, Anthony Pettis, 1 inch taller. He'll have a 2-inch reach advantage for Ferreira. Pettis is the younger fighter by 2 years. And keep in mind, this fight is going back down to 155 pounds, which is where Anthony Pettis fought previously. After he has, like I said, a 2-fight stint at welterweight. Now, Pettis has 31 pro fights, so the fact that he's 2 years younger is great. He's got a ton of fight experience, big fight experience, title fight experience, but it also comes with a lot of mileage. Compared to his opponent, has just 18 pro fights, so Diego not quite as much, and he had a little bit of a layoff, so his body's kind of maybe refreshed itself a little bit. So you look at Anthony Pettis first, you say, how does a fighter like this, how does a veteran fighter with a lot to offer win a matchup like this where he is an underdog? He is the underdog coming into this. Now, he has won 7 of his last 8 fights by stoppage, which indicates to us right then and there that he most likely has to stop Ferreira to win this fight. Not certainly a guarantee, but it's the predominant way he wins his fights. The only fight in that span that he won by decision was a UFC 213 victory over Jim Miller. Now, he is a finisher, as I said, 5 of those 7 finishes in the first half of the fight. So once fights get drawn out a little bit, not exactly Pettis' forte. He is 1-4 in his last 5 fights to go to decision. He is 2-6 overall in round 3 or beyond in his last 8 matchups that go that distance. When you look at things, too, he has 4 victories by submission in recent outings. Charles Oliveira, Michael Chiesa, Benson Henderson, and Gilbert Melendez, all very difficult guys to submit, not easy opponents to get out of there on the mat. So that's something that's worth noting as well, because he's facing another one of those opponents who's going to be very difficult to put away if he is in that position and attempts to go for a submission-based victory. In fact, Diego Ferreira has never been submitted. I hear Ferreira. I'm going to go with Ferreira. Ferreira's never been submitted. He was knocked out by Dustin Poirier. Kyle Nelson hurt him, but he's never been submitted, so he can be stopped on the feet. His chin is an ironclad, but it's still pretty good. That actually could be the best avenue for victory for Showtime if he can catch Ferreira on the feet. He is a quick, dynamic striker. He's lots of options, a big, bag of tricks to call upon. A lot of kicks, a lot of dynamic strikes, a lot of unorthodox techniques that Ferreira might not see coming. If he slams a shin into Ferreira's head, he could absolutely take him out. Now, Diego's tough. He hits hard. He has an advantage on the mat, I would say, overall, even though Pettis has shown what he's capable of and done so against very talented fighters in his own right. Pettis has been taken down fairly consistently in his fights. And while Ferreira isn't a superstar wrestler, he has shown he can land takedowns when needed, especially in the Kyle Nelson fight. When Nelson was kind of having success, Ferreira changed the complexion of that matchup by taking him to the ground. We could see something here similar. Ferreira's also coming off a 109 significant strike performance against Tysimov. That was impressive. 83 against Tabalov, one before that. So he throws bombs, and he can put up a fairly decent pace. Now, for Anthony Pettis, he rarely touches those numbers. In fact, his 2 highest UFC WEC outputs, 69 significant strikes and 80. And in the 69 significant strike fight, it was against Nate Diaz, his last outing, he gave up 114. Now, some of those numbers are the result of the fact he finishes opponents when he wins. But he also has to be concerned about his ability to win fights when he doesn't finish his opposition. When he's drawn into longer, more demanding battles, what is he capable of? He has given up triple digits in 2 of his last 3 outings. He's not a volume striker, as I expressed. He focuses more on technique and flash over functionality. That could be problematic. Pettis, I believe, is a front runner when he doesn't do well in gritty fights. Ferreira's not flashy, but I think he is more functional. I don't think Pettis will want to mess around with him on the ground, especially when strong wrestlers like Tysimov and Habilov couldn't find success there as well. So I don't think that takes away Pettis' submission game. I believe, unless Ferreira gets sloppy, Pettis, he has rallied when counted out, but he took a lot of damage in the Diaz fight. He was getting beaten up in the Thompson fight before getting the knockout. Cutting back down to 155 could be a little bit difficult. I think Diego's just going to make it a dogfight. He's going to push forward. He's going to throw bombs. He's going to close the gap. He might get some takedowns. He'll just be busier, more impactful, and he'll get Pettis to wilt a little bit. And my prediction is Diego Ferreira to defeat Anthony Pettis by decision. Moving right along, we're in the women's strawweight division next. As former title challenger Claudia Gadelha, currently ranked 6th in the division, 16-4-0, takes on the 11th ranked Aleksei Grasso with a record of 11 wins and 2 losses. This is Mexico versus Brazil in this fight, and title implications certainly up for grabs with a new champion and a title fight secured in the not-too-distant future. Now, Gadelha is coming off a win over Randa Marcos, very impressive. She had a loss in Nina Nasrat, which kind of knocked her out of the title contention, a future title shot in, at least the not-too-distant future. But she has won 4 of her last 6 since her title fight loss to Yusuff and Jacek. For Aleksei Grasso, she lost a decision to Carla Esparza. She had a dominant win over Karolina Kowalkiewicz 1 fight earlier. She is just 2-3 over her last 5 fights. Grasso is the taller fighter by 1 inch. She'll have a 3-inch reach advantage as well, and she is 5 years younger. Now, as I said, these fighters are in 2 different places. For Gadelha, she's holding on. She's looking for another shot at the champion. She hasn't fought the current champion, which is huge. She's hoping Joanna doesn't maybe upset her and then reposition herself as the champ. I think Gadelha, a win or 2, could get herself in another title shot. For Grasso, she's still trying to build herself up, and it seems like every time she takes a step forward, she takes a step back. And you have to wonder if this is one of those fights where she takes that next big step or if she's going to be pushed back down the line again. Now, the big trend for Aleksei is that she has struggled with grappling-oriented opposition. GOO, if you will. Now, Esparza against her completed 4 takedowns, won a decision. Suarez landed 2 takedowns and submitted her. Felice Herrig landed 2 takedowns and defeated her. And Randa Marcos, her most legitimate win as far as I'm concerned, landed 4 takedowns against Grasso, but Grasso walked away with a very close split decision win that I actually thought Marcos won. And keep in mind, it was fought in Mexico. And that's going to be an advantage to the local fighter in close fights. Now, can Gadelha replicate those struggles? Great question. She has top-level jiu-jitsu, black belt there, landed 2 takedowns against Nasrat in a loss, 4 takedowns against Haqparast in a win, 6 takedowns against Courtney Casey in a victory. And you go back to the Joanna Jędrzejczyk title fight, she took her down 4 times, and Joanna's got difficult takedown defense to get through. Now, Gadelha has gotten away from her takedowns, or at least faced better defensive fighters in recent action. In her first 5 UFC bouts, 26 completed takedowns and just dominated girls on the mat. Over her last 5 UFC bouts, just 7 takedowns. Now, that comes with an increase in opposition, and that's one of the issues you have to assume is playing a role. But still, can she return to that here against a fighter who appears to have a vulnerability to that? Grasso's takedown defenses look good, but against fighters who aren't necessarily great takedown fighters. Now, Aleksei, again, she had issues getting out of the grappling situations with Esparza. She was able to counter at times, but she couldn't disengage enough to make it count. And Carlo was able to do enough on the mat to earn a decision victory. It's just not the ideal situation for Aleksei. She has good footwork. She has solid kicks. Her striking overall is solid. And that's where she wants this fight to play out. But then when you look at the fighters she's defeated, you start to wonder. Jodie Escobar in her final fight in Invicta, not a great fighter who's really hasn't got a victory at the UFC level yet. Heather Jo Clark, who's done with the UFC, another victory in her debut. And then the Karolina Kowalkiewicz fight, Karolina has really not, is really struggling at this point. That victory does not age well. Her only real victory was the aforementioned one over Randa Marcos. Her only real quality victory, and it was a split decision close fight. Now, Nasrat, she certainly raised concerns over Gadelha's cardio. She was able to defend the takedowns, slow her down, and light her up on the feet, and force that fight to stay vertical. And Claudia, she's capable of fighting the feet. She's got some power. She's shown she can strike. It's not her ideal scenario, just like Grasso is not ideal to fight on the mat. Now, you say, that's huge. But then when you look at Nina did in her next fight against Tatiana Suarez, who is a fucking monster on the ground. Absolutely decimating monster. And Nasrat survived what Suarez brought to her. And while she lost the decision, she had Suarez in some trouble in that final frame. And that shows how big of an animal Nina is. So that maybe makes Gadelha's win stand up more significantly. Claudia hits hard. But again, she's out of her element on the feet as far as what her greatest strength is. I feel like Grasso slows down once the threat of the takedown is established. I think it'll be the case here. Gadelha, I think she would be stupid, misinformed, ill-prepared to overlook the potential takedowns equating success in this fight. Interesting to note, Gadelha opened around -190 and is now a slight underdog in this matchup. So that's worth noting as well. It tells us there's some value there. Gadelha continues, I think, in this fight to take advantage of Aleksei Grasso's issues on the floor. It could be close, but look for more top control for Claudia than Haqparast was able to maintain and really grind this fight out. Maybe get 2 rounds in the books and hang on for dear life in the 3rd round. Not either way, my prediction is Claudia Gadelha to defeat Aleksei Grasso by decision. From the lightest ladies to the big giants, we are in the UFC's heavyweight division as the boa constrictor Aleksei Oleinik, ranked 12th, 57 wins. That's correct, 57 wins, 12 losses and 1 draw. Takes on the crochet boss Maurice Greene with a current record of 8 wins and 4 defeats. Now, Oleinik looks like his time could be catching up to him. He has lost back-to-back fights by round 1 knockout to Alistair Overeem and Walt Harris, the Walt Harris KO ending in just 12 seconds. For Maurice Greene, he had won 3 in a row to start his UFC career, but he lost violently to Sergey Pavlovich, a fight I got incorrect, in the first round of his fight in Singapore. Now, Greene comes into this fight at 6'7". The man's a monster, 5 inches taller than Oleinik, but they will have surprisingly the same 80-inch reach. Oleinik's got some long-ass arms. Now, Greene will be 18 to 20 pounds heavier than his opponent and 9 years younger, so a lot of physicality in favor of Greene. Now, you look at Maurice Greene, he lost, his loss was on foreign soil. Now he's back in the U.S., which should help his comfort factor. Now, the reason I say this is Oleinik lost his last 2 fights in the UFC that he's fought in the United States. In fact, he's lost 3 of his last 5 fights to fight outside of his, or at least in the United States. And he was losing the Travis Brown fight, at least early, having some issues before rallying to get the finish in that one. So again, he hasn't exactly been an all-star on the road. That being said, he's 42 years old. Traveling might not be ideal for him, but he does train out of ATT. So there could be a perceived advantage for Greene there, but I'm not sure how much of it one. Now, for Oleinik, he wants to take one approach to fights, and that is his ideal scenario is to get the fight to the ground and set up a submission game. Any way he can do it. 45 wins by submission, and the thing that he does so effectively is that he throws unique, unexpected techniques at opponents that even guys with some solid grappling defense are not anticipating, don't have a lot of experience dealing with, and don't know how to defend against. Ideally, the Ezekiel choke or the scarf hold headlock are 2 maneuvers that he has pulled off on multiple occasions and caught experienced fighters off guard. Now, in this fight, again, he's not the greatest wrestler, But he'll pull guard. He'll dive on a leg. He likes to create chaos with his power and willingness to move forward and get the fight to the floor and go from there. He will throw big hammers. Again, those long arms allows him to really swing. He knocked out Jared Rosholt, which is damn impressive. He had Aleksei Overeem in trouble. Again, it's all about creating chaos, force them to shell up, and then possibly get the fight to the ground. Or hurt them, and then you wind up on the mat, even if you're on your back. Set up that Ezekiel choke pull. He did that against Victor Pesta, which is incredibly impressive. I believe he did it against Junior Albini as well. And then maybe he clips you, hurts you, and takes you out just vertically. Ultimately gets you into a grappling match. Now versus Overeem, he was moving forward, throwing and clinching and working dirty box, outworking him, hurting him early, put a huge pace on him. Overeem might have been slowing down a little bit, just was getting outworked. Alistair was savvy, was able to survive, use that veteran experience to survive and get Oleinik out of there after that. Now, Greene, when he fought Hughes in his debut, was struggling at times. Hughes took the fight on short notice, a fight that Hughes won the first time they met. Hughes was having success getting in range despite a reach and height disadvantage. He was getting in and landing shots. I would hazard to say that Oleinik, who has a much longer reach, could find similar success here. Greene likes to use kicks, especially the oblique kick, to manage distance. He comes from that kickboxing background, but he still has trouble maintaining distance. Sergey Pavlovich was able to move forward relatively easily and land big shots, and Greene really didn't do well once that first shot hit. And once Greene was popped with a jab in that fight, you can almost see his willingness to engage dissipated, and he was just waiting for an opportunity to get out of there. As big shots rained down, he covered up, and that was it. Now, Alistair Overeem, he hit Oleinik with a ton of stuff. Oleinik's got a lot of knockout losses. I want to say 7. But Overeem cracked him with a lot of big shots, a lot of knees, really took advantage of Oleinik's willingness to duck his head to look for takedowns. And Oleinik still stuck around for a long time. He got out of there eventually, but still he hung out. If you go back to the Travis Brown-Aleksei Oleinik fight, Brown has a similar build to Greene, more experienced fighter, but still. Brown was throwing a lot of kicks. He was a taller fighter, and Oleinik still hurt him, still got inside. Eventually got the fight to the floor and submitted him. Look for something similar here. Overall, the experience absolutely favors Aleksei. Even more so when they hit the floor. That experience and that unorthodox techniques makes Greene in a point of vulnerability. Oleinik hits very hard, and I'm not sure Greene can handle it. He ate that big jab from Pavlovich's head, and he completely shut down. And if Aleksei can move forward and swing, he can hurt Greene, he can clinch with him, he can hurt him in there, he can get him to the floor, he can certainly piece him up there. I think unless we see Maurice catch him coming forward and knock him out, or maybe survive around and Oleinik has a big drop-off in performance, I think Maurice Greene's in a difficult spot here. I think Greene gets backed up, he's going to get cracked with some big shots, and he's either going to get dropped and finished or dropped and subbed, and the fight will end up on the ground. At the same time, don't be shocked to see Greene press forward and Oleinik lure him into the clinch and then look to attack with that Ezekiel choke. Either way, the savvy veteran gets himself in a position to utilize his greatest gifts, and my prediction is Aleksei Oleinik to defeat Maurice Greene by submission. Moving now to the co-main event of the evening, we are in the UFC's women's bantamweight division. His former champion, the Preacher's daughter, Holly Holm, ranked 3rd, 12-5-0, takes on the former title challenger, Raquel Pennington, currently ranked 5th. She has a record of just 10 wins and 8 defeats. And again, I don't think the UFC does an overly great job of updating their records on their website, which is rather disappointing. So, again, take those numbers with a little bit of caution, at least where they're at. They're usually relatively accurate, but sometimes missing the most recent appearance. Now, this fight is a rematch. They initially fought at UFC 184. Holmes won by split decision. It was her debut. They were scheduled to collide again at UFC 243. Holmes pulled out with an injury, and now we're getting this matchup at this point in time. Now, Holly is coming off a UFC 239 round 1 TKO loss via head kick to Amanda Nunes, the reigning undisputed women's GOAT. The first knockout loss of Holmes' career, a head kick stoppage nonetheless, which she is known for those head kick stoppages, and she has just 2 wins in her last 7 fights, if I recall correctly. That's not a lot, but she's been fighting some top world championship caliber opposition, the best of the best. Now for Raquel Pennington, no slouch either. She's coming off a split decision nod over Irene Aldana. I got that fight correct. She had lost back-to-back to Amanda Nunes, the round 5 TKO. I had Nunes to win that matchup by decision, and had Pennington held on, I would have won a ton of cash. That was a difficult one to watch. And then she lost after that to Germaine de Randami, the girl who just fought for the title and went all the way with Nunes. Prior to that, she won 4 in a row to get herself in a position to fight for the title. Her title fight wasn't overly awesome. It was more of a defensive a performance where she just hung on for the majority of it. She had a few moments. Holly, 1 inch taller, 2 inch reach advantage. She is the older fighter, though, by 7 years. Now, this is the first time they fought was 5 years ago. As I said, it was Holly Holmes' debut. It was Pennington's Holly Holmes. It's Holly Holm. People call her Holly Holmes. It's Holly Holm. apostrophe S. It was her debut. For Pennington, it was her 4th fight in the UFC. Now, in that matchup, Holm walked away the 44-40 strike advantage, so outstruck her by 4. It was close. Holly spent the majority of the fight backing up at range using kicks. Pennington was looking for to close the distance and utilize her boxing, and she attempted 5 takedowns and landed none. Pennington spent the majority of the fight walking forward and Holm backing up. Holm used her defensive, defense as an offense. Batter with leg kicks. Pick away at her opponent as they move forward, make her walk into techniques, and just simply put, do damage as your opponent walks forward. Raquel had trouble reaching her. She earned a split decision because she was able to start pressing forward and land more and more and got more aggressive. Her coaches between rounds 2 and 3 really got into her and said, hey, you got to go here. This is your opportunity. Now, we need to establish the fact this is a post-title fight letdown scenario for Holly Holm. She lost to Amanda Nunes. She's coming off the title fight loss. She lost to Nunes. Where am I looking at here? Sorry. When you look back, when she lost her title to Miesha Tate, her next fight was against Valentina Shevchenko, and she lost that matchup. That cost me a lot of money, actually, as well. When she lost to Germaine de Randami for the featherweight title, her next fight was against Betch Correia. She won that fight by knockout, but it was not a great performance leading up to the knockout. When she lost to Cyborg, her next fight was a victory against Megan Anderson. So overall, Holly Holm has been in this position 3 times and won 2 fights. So she's actually overcome the stigma of the post-title fight letdown. But you have to draw, you look at, you say Betch Correia, Megan Anderson, where do they rank in here? Again, not a great fight in the Betch fight, and she capitalized. She got hurt early by Anderson, but she capitalized on the situation of her poor grappling defense and got her out of there. Now, Pennington, she lost to Amanda Nunes and then had that letdown fight against Germaine de Randami. She rebounded with a win over Irina Aldana, a very close fight, very entertaining fight. So that's a real scenario, and that has to be taken into account here, that Holly Holm, who's not one of these explosive, super aggressive, dynamic fighters who's going to have to be really off their game to put in a flat performance, she's one of these more consistent, offensively sound, technically defensively sound fighters who, if she has a poor performance, it really shows up significantly. Now, when you look at Pennington, she is younger than Holly Holm, but she has developed more in the last 5 years when they fought, as far as I'm concerned. She's added more experience. Both girls have added experience, and Holm has come a long way. Holm's fought in some big fights, but I think Pennington's maybe has improved more since they last fought. We also have to deal with the issue of, again, Holm coming off her first knockout loss. That further magnifies. You get knocked out in the first round of a title fight, which could be your last title fight. You get knocked out via head kick, which is your move predominantly. That messes with you. And that could be a major issue here. Pennington needs to be aggressive from the onset, which she knows from her last time she fought. She needs to push forward, make this a gritty fight, and really take the fight to Holly. Don't let her set up. Whether you can take her down or not, clinch up with her. Land strikes, really push a pace. She has landed 5 takedowns. She has landed takedowns in 5 of her last 7 fights, recording wins in 4 of those 5 fights when she does. That's huge. If she can land a takedown or 2 against Holly Holm, that's massive. I'm not saying she's going to, but that's a key aspect. It's also worth noting that Pennington has 1-0 in rematches after losing the first fight. And it was crazy. I had Andrade to beat her the first time around. I had Pennington to beat Andrade the second time around, and it worked out perfectly. So she knows all about making adjustments. We've seen that. The post-title fight letdown scenario for Holm, the knockout loss for Holly, the fact the first fight was very close, the fact that Pennington has grown and improved since this matchup, has an idea what she needs to do, where I don't think Holly can make the adjustments. The winning fighter in the first fight tends to not make too many adjustments because why would they? They've won that matchup. Maybe they will. Holly's a very smart fighter. Her camp is a very strong camp, but nonetheless, that's an advantage to Pennington. Look for Raquel to be more aggressive. She's going to grind Holly out on the cage at times. She's going to push forward. She's going to land shots, and she's going to make Holly defensive. I think this is going to be a very close fight. It could be a split decision again, but my prediction is Raquel Pennington to defeat Holly Holm by decision. We move now to the main event of the evening, and very rarely do we get a pay-per-view headline by a non-title fight, but that's what we have here as the notorious Conor McGregor, the former champ, the former featherweight and lightweight champion, the 4th-ranked fighter, I believe, in the lightweight division. I believe that's where the rankings come down. 21 wins and 4 losses, returns to action to take on the 5th-ranked Donald Cowboy Cerrone, 36-13-0 with 1 no contest. This fight will be transpiring at welterweight, despite the fact they're both ranked at lightweight. It's a huge fight, simply because Conor McGregor's name, and Cerrone's a fan favorite. This is a fight a lot of people talked about wanting to see happen, and finally it's going to happen. We've heard rumors about Conor calling this guy out and wanting to fight this guy, but finally we get Donald Cerrone versus Conor McGregor in Donald Cerrone's Conor McGregor's return bout, whether it's the return to relative consistency with his activity in the UFC, or it's just a one-off, or what it's going to be. Neither fighter currently is in title contention on their merit alone, but with their names and a big performance here, both guys are back in the mix. Whoever comes away with this anyway. McGregor is coming off a 2018 title fight loss to Khabib Nurmagomedov and all the nonsense there, the Floyd Mayweather fight as well. He has one fight in his last 38 months. For Cerrone, he has lost back-to-back fights to Tony Ferguson and Justin Gaethje, two of the top contenders. Ferguson fighting for the title next. Gaethje is on deck, you would have to say. Prior to that, he had won 3 in a row to get himself on the cusp of a title shot again. Now, I said this fight's taking place at welterweight. Both guys have dabbled at 170 before, but the bulk of their recent action has been lighter weight classes, 155 for Cerrone, 155, and of course 145 for Conor. Now, for Cerrone, he is 4 inches taller, but Conor will have a 1-inch reach advantage, which is surprising to many, and he is the younger fighter by 5 years. Now, there's so many places and so many things to talk about with this fight, so where do we start? Well, let's start with Conor. The layoff and the change of lifestyle need to be documented and be paid attention to here. Where is his head at? He has made a lot of money, and he's been away from the game for a long time. Is he still hungry? Does he still train? He hasn't been nearly as active. Is he determined? Does he care? Is he going to push himself to that next level against a guy who hasn't maybe been to that level? Is he going to be able to match that intensity of training, a competition, that willingness to work, that willingness to hurt and still keep going? Now, the big counter-argument to that is he didn't need to come back, but he is. So maybe he is ready. Maybe he is focused. I like Conor McGregor in the sense that I will watch him. Am I a huge fan of his? No. If he fought on a regular basis, would I be a fan? Probably. I'm a guy who's committed. I like a guy who's committed to MMA. The long layoff by itself and post-title fight letdown scenarios are absolutely areas of concern. Is it a different scenario because of the diminished impact, because it's a little bit different with Conor? Because the long break, does that help him get fired back up? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. He knows a win here, and he's probably in line for something significant. He's going to fight in big fights the rest of his career, so it's not. I don't think it's as big a scenario for him. Now, for Cerrone, he had won 3 in a row and was on the cusp of a title shot again. Back-to-back losses have knocked him out of that spot. He will be 37. He's getting up there, but he still loves fighting, and he is motivated. He's got his kid. He likes to come out and perform. He's that type of guy who just, I know a guy, and you got to love that mentality. Very different than Conor McGregor. Now, he has fought 5 times since Conor last saw action, and he has fought 11 times in the same span that Conor's fought twice, which is great. Experience, activity, but is his body broken up a little bit? He's fought some big men at 170 pounds. Darren Till, who's now fighting 185 and looks big. Is his body busted up? That's a great question. Is there wear and tear on that? Has he slowed down a little bit, and is that helping him to recover? Now, there's the other big issue, to talk of the southpaw scenario. Conor McGregor's a southpaw. There have been commented by multiple people. This is not an original idea by me by any stretch of the imagination. You look at the last number of guys to beat Donald Cerrone, a lot of them are southpaws. Leon Edwards, Darren Till, RDA, Robbie Lawler, all those southpaws. In fact, over Cerrone's last 8 victories, he has just 1 victory over a true southpaw opponent in Rick Story. Conor standing southpaw and firing offense from that side could be a major issue. He could exploit that. There must be some defensive gaps there. Cerrone, when you have 2 people fighting each other in the opposite stances, Cerrone's body is open, and that's been an issue. RDA and Anthony Pettis stopped him with huge body kicks. Cerrone's documented had body issues. Could Conor slam a big back leg body kick into his midsection and put him down? That's certainly a real possibility. Now, on the flip side of things, there's concerns about Conor McGregor fighting 170 pounds. Is it too heavy for him? He fought Nate Diaz twice at 170 pounds. I believe they're both at 170. Correct me if I'm wrong. He's got a small frame, 5'9". Does his body carry 175 pounds effectively in a 5-round fight? That's a great question. If I had to lean one way or the other, if you can take the 2 Diaz fights and say which one is he more likely to put forth, I would have to say Diaz number 1. The fight where he starts strong, but then fades and gets, a fighter who's more adept at fighting in rounds 2, 3, and 4, and 5 takes that matchup over. And that's a big question. Now you have to look at Donald Cerrone's ground game. He has 17 career wins by submission. He landed takedowns in 3 of his 4 welterweight bouts. He felt maybe without cutting that weight, he's able to expend more energy and look for takedowns. And maybe that's something he'll look at here. All 4 of Conor's career losses have been by submission. They call it, I think, McTapper, which whatever. If that's what your vulnerability is, that's what your vulnerability is. And if you've only lost 4 times and you're facing top-level competition, okay, that's what happens. Is Cerrone too proud to target a weakness like that? He only has 2 submission wins over his last 14 fights. Some of that is because his striking has developed so well, where before he used to drop guys and then submit them, now he just drops them and finishes them, or drops them and that's it. But still, 2 wins in his last 14 fights. Will he jump on the opportunity to submit his opponent? I don't know. Now, the odds opened for Donald Cerrone at plus 130, And with Conor McGregor's name jumping out there, people poured money in on Conor, and he's now at Donald Cerrone's now at plus 277. There is value on that. Absolute value on that. We haven't seen Conor in a while. He's an elite level guy, or at least he's perceived to be an elite level fighter. Cerrone's coming off back-to-back finishes. Maybe he's done. He's older. He's not as flashy. This is Conor's fight to win. Conor's best bet to win this matchup is to finish it early. Look for that big shot. Look for those big hands. Body kicks if necessary. Take Cerrone out. Land with power. Put him down. Do not allow this to turn into a long, drawn-out battle. For Cerrone, he needs to manage distance, but threaten with takedowns when Conor moves forward. Do not allow Conor to settle in. Cerrone struggles when he's pressured. He has struggled with Eddie Alvarez and Nate Diaz and these guys, Jorge Masvidal. These guys are going to come out and box him and pressure him and put it on him. Conor likes to stand at range and show a lot of flashy technique, throw kicks, and that style actually worked very well with what Cowboy is going to show us. Cowboy is going to say, you want to go shot for shot? I will go shot for shot with you. I will stylize with you, and we'll see who comes out on top. And I think that's a good matchup for him, especially with Cerrone being the taller man. Well, he doesn't have the reach advantage. The height is certainly going to be helpful. Cerrone's in a better spot here despite the back-to-back losses. I think he's going to survive the early exchanges. He'll have to watch for Conor to come storming out of the gates. Conor's traditionally not a great starter. You look at the Chad Mendes fight. It's hard to say when you think about the Aldo knockouts. Maybe I should recant on that a little bit. But he's not known for a guy who's going to come out storming out of the gates and just absolutely fucking run somebody over. Could he murk Cerrone at the first shot like he did Aldo? He could. I had him to win that fight, not by those means. But I think Cerrone's going to in a better spot here. He's going to survive the early exchanges. He's going to be able to avoid all the big shots from Conor. Do not be surprised if Cowboy looks to take him down. Do not be surprised if Cerrone wants to take this fight, make this fight dirty, make this fight a war. It took a lot of beating from Tony Ferguson to get him out of there. Justin Gaethje hits like a fucking tank, and that fight came off of the Tony Ferguson loss. Now, there is some argument that could be made that Cowboy is probably not in the best spot here, considering where he's coming off that fight. Let's see, just quickly. September is when he got knocked out by Justin Gaethje in June. So he hasn't exactly had a ton of time. What are we talking? September, October, November, December, January, barely 4 months. So that is concerning a little bit. Nonetheless, I still think he's in a better spot. I think Conor's going to gas out here in rounds 2. I think the weight's too much for him. I think Cerrone's going to push a pretty good pace. Yes, he did better against Nate Diaz, but he was being more active in the Nate Diaz fight. He was more active overall. I think Cowboy gets him down, uses that size a little bit once they're on the mat. Cerrone takes advantage of the submission game, and my prediction is Donald Cowboy Cerrone to defeat Conor McGregor by submission. So that was a long-ass breakdown of the last fight, but I think it's warranted. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 246. All of my preliminary picks will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net along with the bet packs. Please check them out. As you might have noticed, I've changed the logo that represents Kamikaze Overdrive just a little bit. I'm changing the backgrounds just to cut down on some of the time I have to spend preparing for each video and focus more on preparing fight breakdowns. I've eliminated doing the posters as much as I fucking love doing that. I might do it once in a blue moon, but I'm going to go with this more focused approach. It's a little easier to prepare. Nonetheless, thank you so much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate it. As always, follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Enjoy the fights, guys. It's going to be a great start to 2020 either way, whether I do really well or not. Thanks very much for tuning in. Greatly appreciate you, and I will talk to you in the not-too-distant future. Hi.